All right. Well, I'm going to call the meeting to order, and Rena can join us when she can. So the first thing is invitation for public comments. We have Chris and Dan. You're still considered part of the public because Paul is representing Parks Commission, and Marla also is part of the public. Do any of you three wish to make any comments of any sort?
I think I would comment to say something similar to what I said. I had sent an email earlier talking about when we're trying to communicate to landowners, there's two types of information that we want to convey to them. There's the factual information that they're looking to gain about what are the types of conservation restrictions or the legal things that they can use to save money on their taxes, and they would like to hear that from a professional. And then there's also the type of information, I think it was tacit information, which is information that isn't necessarily factual, but is more story based, or something that you learn from someone else who has gone through a similar experience. So the thought would be, when you have these meetings with potential people who want to learn more about what they could do with their land, I'm just mentioning, the thought I'm trying to mention is, think about having those two types of people represented.
Okay. All right. Dan, is for 2 or 3 people that just joined us, we just see Rini by iPhone. Hi, Rini. Can you hear us? We can't hear you. And I don't know if you're muted, Rini. And also Eileen Hamill, I see. And you're muted as well, Eileen. And that's about, whatever you want to do. And Dan LaValle, we're at the point of public comments right now. Dan is a member of the public, and he also is taking a course at University of Massachusetts in conservation. So he was just mentioning 2 types of information for us to consider as we approach various landowners. One is factual information, and it generally comes from a professional, very specific, knowledgeable person, and the other is tacit, story-based, from somebody with similar experiences. And that's really helpful, Dan. We just kind of continue those thoughts when we get to the point of talking about our process for contacting landowners and talking about conservation. So just hold those comments. Do any of the other members of the public have any comment to make at this point? You can interject later on if you wish. Okay. All right. And I just got a text. Diana Fetterman got bumped out somehow. She's going to try to come back in again. I don't know why. So we'll just continue. So the next thing on the agenda is the minutes, and those were emailed out to the committee. Does anybody have any comments, or had you had a chance to read them? And don't forget, our last meeting was 1 week ago, so it wasn't that long ago. Anybody who's on the committee have any comments about the minutes as they were emailed out?
I read them, they look fine to me.
Okay, hearing no comments at this point, does anybody wish to make a motion to accept them as written?
I'll make such a motion.
Oh, okay, all right. I heard a motion from Charlie. Did you speak, Rini? I'm sorry.
I did. I'll second it.
Okay, great. So Charlie and Rini, and do I have any other discussion of the minutes? If not, all in favor of accepting as written, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Groden, aye.
Okay, I think that was unanimous, yeah. And given that Diana wrote them, I'm assuming it's unanimous. She gets back in. Okay, next on the agenda is old business. And last week's meeting was pretty much entirely around one topic, and that was the fact that the course that Dan is in at UMass, the instructor, the professor whose name is Paul Contanzaro, has apparently working with some of his credit gaining students to develop projects around conservation. We came up with ideas. I emailed Paul and have had no response. Dan, I asked to see what he could get from Paul. Dan, can you give us any kind of an update from Mr. Contanzaro?
It may not be that point in the semester where he's getting, maybe that's later on, because he again, I emailed him and copied you on it and he didn't get back to me. So they had a quiz today, so they may have been focused on the fact that they had that happening at the end of their class.
Okay. I guess I misunderstood. I thought that those assignments would be coming out rather early in the semester, but you're not sure that's the case. Is that right? I
mean, I would expect if they were, that he would have responded. I can do no more than repeatedly ask him.
Okay, good. Well, asking and being, inquisitive is something different than being a pest, but don't be a pest.
Yes, I won't be a pest.
All right, great. All right, so we'll keep working on that. And we primarily zeroed in on the idea of something around water conservation, wetland preservation, and that aspect of conservation, especially as it's so important in our community in Southampton. Irina, you weren't here last week. I emailed you an update on that. Did you have any particular comments on that at all?
No, I'm really grateful, actually. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll see if this works out. I guess it's a case of matching a student with a project. So anybody else want to comment on that?
I'm glad for the choices.
Yeah, Cindy, just to sort of expand on that a little bit, not just water conservation, but I think we talked about watershed, mapping out maybe where the watersheds are in town and how important they are to the aquifer, et cetera. So an educational component as well, but basically looking at the watershed in town as a real focal point.
Thanks,
education and communication, to the residents of the town with a pamphlet of sorts on those topics.
I think my email was a little more expansive than what I just said. Yes, thank you for that, though. I'm hoping that we get a student that gets inspired to do these things. So great. All right. Well, please look for more updates on that on future meetings, and Dan will continue, and I will actually send him another email in a week or so just to see if he had a chance to think about it or if he knows of a student. Okay. So next on our agenda is lands. And one of the other things we talked about last week was a specific piece of property on map 31, lot 2, and that's on the Easthampton line over near lands that currently owned by the state, a division of wildlife. Where did I write that down? State wildlife protection area, and also over the aquifer and close to lands that have already been conserved for water conservation. I emailed directly to the gentleman who sent the letter, and I can say his name because it's public that he's talking about the letter that he brought to our attention. His name is Donald Sikowski. I have not had a response to the email. And then Diana, I asked her to, because I'm not home right now, I asked her to create a hard copy letter directly to his mailing address. And did you have a chance to do that, Diana, under my signature?
I did that last week. Just FYI, I'm just now back on. So the last thing I heard was Dan said, so you guys can fill that in for the minutes. And
okay, great. The minutes from last week were unanimously accepted, Diana.
Okay.
Without change. And the only other thing we talked about was the student project, and we haven't heard from the professor, Mr. Contanzaro, yet. And Dan wasn't sure if the assignment would come so early in the semester. He wasn't really sure, so we're still working on that. Okay.
Okay.
So we don't have it. And then we started to talk about Mr. Sikowski, and you sent a letter to say we're interested in meeting with him. Is that right?
I just said that I signed your name to it, that I hoped you received our letter, and that we're especially interested in conserving lands that abut other conserved land, and we would hope to meet with you, and gave him your contact information.
Okay, great. Okay, super. So the other things I've done, I emailed the chairperson of the water commissioners, and that's Matt Christie, and I haven't heard back from him. And I did it through his email, which is the town email site, which I think is the right thing to do. If anybody has another email for him, I don't know if he automatically gets those emails. Does anybody have a personal email for Matt Christie?
I just want to let you know, Cindy, this is Rini, that
Yes.
there's been a bunch of emails going around today relative to the fact that Matt Christie moved out of town and now lives in Westfield and is the registered voter in Westfield. So I do believe there will be a resignation coming from him because of that. So I don't know what the plan will be. There might be another commissioner that might be a good person to reach out to. But I guess until there's a resignation, I think, continuing to follow up with Matt would be the right thing to do. I don't have a personal email, though.
Okay, Eileen, I think you were sort of mouthing something. But now you're unmuted. Did you have something to say?
I can get his personal email.
Okay, if you want to get it to me directly, do you know my email? You do know it, right, Eileen? You know what my email is.
Yes.
Okay, great. So you can get that to me and I'll contact him directly. Thanks, Rainey, for that. If you hear any more about changes on that board, would you let us know? That'd be great. So I've emailed him. I also did another email to Barbara LaFlamme because she may know him personally. I haven't heard back from her again. I probably will. And I also did email the contact that I could find on the web for Mass Fish and Wildlife just to say who is the right person to talk to regarding the fact that land is very close to their land. I have not contacted anybody in Easthampton yet, and I'll tell you why. In my opinion, I want to talk to Mr. Sikowski first. I want to see if he's made any contact with anyone in Easthampton before I jump in and do that. Does anybody else have thoughts on this?
Just FYI, I ran into Kurt Beaujolais, who was the former water commissioner, and just kind of like mentioned that there was maybe some more land there. And he said it's definitely an Easthampton thing. So for what that's worth, he seemed to think it was their ballpark.
No, even though the land's in Southampton?
No, I think the land is in Easthampton.
Well, there is a parcel
that's what I thought.
No, there is a 31-acre parcel in Southampton. There is, it's on our maps.
Oh, I understood that it was not in Southampton, but that's okay.
Map 31, parcel 2, 31 acres. Remember we looked at that? It's not to say he doesn't have some part of it extending into Easthampton. You see from my map. I don't know if you want to look at anybody, but it's right there.
I thought April said that it was mostly in Easthampton. That's what I just remember.
Well, there may be, let's find out. I got the impression that.
Our map just goes to the town line.
Yeah, and it says that.
You could also go into Easthampton.
On map 31, at the very top of that, and then I know that that's that little map that juts off to the east.
Mm-hmm.
If you see it, the line is right there, but it's still 31 acres in Southampton.
Yeah. Okay.
But if the largest part of the parcel is in Easthampton, I don't know. He sent the letter to us. He sent the letter to Easthampton. To Southampton.
Well, maybe Mr. Beaujolais just meant that it's Easthampton's water under there, that they're getting their water from under there. That could have been what he was referring to. But I think also, are we going to contact the Fisheries and Wildlife, the local division or the state division? There's the local one in Hadley.
Yep.
And then there's the state one.
Oh, well, the one you sent me the picture of, Diane, I got the sense that was state.
It is state, but I meant they have a branch in Hadley.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So we'll find the address. I'll try to contact them too.
Yeah. I know of somebody with Fish and Wildlife. I think her name is Christina Peterson. I'll have to check that out, though. And I think she's local.
That's familiar. Yeah.
Out of the Hadley office, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, great.
It's a state office, but it's in Hadley. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the local office would be more familiar with
Yeah.
Easthampton and Southampton, rather than going to the state first.
Okay. Okay. If either you, Chris, or Diana, or anybody can give me a contact for the Hadley one, or do I just,
Yeah,
I can just Google it?
I'm pretty sure she's from Hadley. I'll find. I talked to her a couple months ago, so I'll look her up again.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Okay.
I'll send you the information.
Good. Okay. So that's all I know about that particular parcel, but I do know that that's really kind of a priority right now, one way or the other, to find out what's going on and not let it slip through our fingers. Does anybody else have any discussion about that parcel?
No, I mean, I think we talked last week that it's tied right close anyway to the Laflamme Cook Road property that we did preserve as watershed.
Yeah.
So
It has
that was
some advantages to it.
right. So
Relative
that's
to the aquifer and so on.
right. So there's got, some interest on it from our point of view as well as Fish and Wildlife. So, yeah, I mean,
I think it'd be paramount to get the Water Commission on board as soon as possible, because if we had to apply for the grant, they're the ones who would have to do it.
right.
Yep. Okay. Yep. All right. We'll keep talking about that at every meeting. So the other land that we were going to try to talk about tonight, but I contacted Barry Searle to see if he could be present at the meeting. He's recovering from a procedure that he had, and he said he's really not up to coming to meetings quite yet. And he was going to hopefully talk to us about that parcel that's under Alder Pond, that's owned by the town. And he, as you remember from a couple meetings ago, we have some very, very preliminary information about what that is and what that's about. But Barry has sort of family history regarding all of that. So we're going to have to put that off till another meeting when Barry can come and be with us. Okay. I don't have any other updates about any specific parcels that we've talked about in the past. I have nothing new regarding that land, which is right next to Durrell's Path. I don't know if that gentleman who owns it, who lives on Glendale Road, not far from where I live, if he's back in town or not, but I will put a call into him before the next meeting to see if he's in town and what we know, just so we can do an update on that.
Okay.
What else on old lands? Any other old land discussions that anybody wants to bring up that we've talked about before?
Well, didn't Dan want to talk about that land on Lead Mine Road?
That's not been talked about before, though. That's any that we've previously talked about. Dan's this first time at this meeting.
Right.
Okay. Do you want to bring it up, Dan? Do you know what we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I can bring it up. There's a property that is listed on Lead Mine Road. I forget exactly how many acres it is. It's predominantly wetland. Using the mapper tool that we like to use to score these properties, it came out with a pretty decent score. One of the I'd say difficulties or interesting parts of the parcel is I believe it straddles the Southampton West Hampton border. So I believe part of it may be in West Hampton as well. But in terms of, it's interesting that that large piece of land, which has gone undeveloped, maybe for reasons that it is not developable, has been available. I believe there is another there on that street on Lead Mine Road, close to there is a land trust property. It's not a kestrel property, but I do believe there is a land trust property near there. So perhaps the approach to take with that would be to talk with the land trust that is on that street already to see if there is an interest. I believe the owner of the property is currently living in, I think, Florida, and the property is being dealt with by their their I think maybe not son, but a relative. So I think it's an opportunity to talk to them about, well, what do they want to do with it when what are their plans for their will and trust, and what do they want to do with that land when in the future, and how do they see that land? Do they want to see it being held whole and protected as wildlife? I think that it may be an opportunity to have someone have a conversation with them to perhaps preserve a large parcel of land through conversation.
So Dan, I don't know. Did I loan you my copy of my maps or give you a copy?
Yes, you loan it. I'm looking at it right now. I should probably find it on your map. That would probably be helpful.
I think you're talking about map 6, parcel 6. Am I right?
One moment. Oh, jeez. It's got a weird shape to it.
Yeah, and I see it's right where Westhampton comes down like a corner. And Diana?
No, that's not it.
That's not it? Oh.
It's much bigger than that.
I think it's the Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah, I see that. Diana, are you looking at that map 6, parcel 6?
Yeah, but that's only 33.5 acres. And the one I thought on Lead Mine Road, off of Lead Mine Road, was like 90 acres.
Yeah, I'll actually just try to pull it up on the internet.
But Diana, if you look at the little note next to the name, it says 90 plus acres on the market. And I think what Dan just said is a good portion of it might be in Westhampton.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering if that's the one. And Brittany Taylor, who lives up there, I think in the past, I think this is the parcel she has concerned about. Is that right, Dan?
Yeah, that's actually the reason. I had a conversation with her, and she said that was the reason she got herself involved with town government, because she saw this property and was interested in trying to preserve it. So
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, well, I wonder if I can help.
So
is the land trust down the street? Isn't that the New England Forest Foundation? Is that what we're talking about?
That could be it. Yeah. I actually don't remember off the top of my head.
The New England Forest Foundation is on the opposite side of the road, isn't it, Diana? It's up behind the Beagle Club and up, on map 1 too as well. The New England Forest Foundation. It's the map above 6. But nonetheless, I think it's one of those parcels we need to have on our list for all the reasons you just said.
I think it's a good opportunity to, if there's someone, a good way to approach this situation is, if there is someone who knows this person or this family, they're already in their network, right? So them bringing up the conversation of, well, what are your thoughts for this property when you pass on, or what do you want to do with this property? It brings up them to think about, well, how do they want to write in their will and trust, and I'd see that as the opportunity to acquire it.
So that brings up a couple of questions, because it's sort of been in my mind, because I remember Brittany talking about it even a couple of years ago. Does anybody know if there's a local person or anyone who knows this family who, from what we know, is this person lives in Jacksonville, Florida? Secondly, I rethink that Brittany got Kestrel up there and they walked the land together. Didn't Mark Walmsley walk that land at one point with
she's explored a number of times. She said if I or anybody else was ever interested, she said I think her actual where she lives is she's in a butter to it. Yeah. So she was like, you could see the property.
I think Mark Walmsley and the Concom and Brittany, I think they all walked it, and I think the outcome was that the people want to sell it. So Marla,
or Charlie or anybody from Concom, do you want to mention any knowledge you have of that?
How about you, Marla? I thought you gave a description of it before. Are you there?
Yeah. When Brittany saw it for sale, she had come to some meetings and we talked about it, and Kestrel was involved, and we looked at it. Certainly, a big chunk of it is in Westhampton. The Westhampton side is landlocked, right? So the only way to get to that upland dry property would be either through the wet Southampton side, go up the hill, or get an easement from someone in Westhampton. So one of the reasons why, this is totally just my opinion, that people aren't rushing to get it is it's expensive to build all the either wetland replication or bridging to get over all the wet part in Southampton to the dry part. There had been some interest a while back in some company who wanted to put solar panels up on the Westhampton side, because basically they'd cut down all the trees and put solar panels. And then basically that would only be temporary crossings to get over the wetland for the construction. But I don't know where that went. So there certainly could be a house. There's a dry enough land to put a house on the Southampton side, but then you'd be buying a bunch of real estate, and people do that. I'd pick it up with Kestrel again if you're interested, and you also would have to work in part with folks on the Westhampton side.
Okay. Am I right that at one point there is a developer who lives up there, Richard Trueheart? Did he not have a comment about it? Because he might even, his land, which is above that on Lead Mine Road, his own land. Did he, Marla, remind me, did he comment on to whether or not he thinks it was developable?
I don't know anything about what Mr. Trueheart had said about it.
Okay. All right.
I'm going by what Kestrel and the real estate agent were talking about when we were there hopping over streams.
Okay. So maybe the next step is to, well, here's another question. Does anyone know any local person who's in contact or knows anything about this owner?
Hasn't that property had a sign on it for sale?
For a long time.
Yeah, so that real estate agent would probably be able to give you some information about it.
That's a good idea. Okay. Diana, that's on your assignment map. Am I right? You have 6?
Yes.
So it's something we know about, right? That it's worth looking into, and maybe we can.
I could, excuse me for interrupting, but I could go back through the MLS. If it was up for sale through the multiple listing service, I should be able to find it and find out who had it listed and at least get a name and phone number.
I have it pulled up on my screen right now.
Yeah,
in total, it is 92 acres. Its address would be 19 Lead Mine Road in Southampton. It's been on the market for 1,050 days. Wow. So, yeah.
And the price has come down, and
right.
The same real estate agent who was on the account when we went there a few years ago, his name is still on the signs that are up now.
Mm-hmm.
And I happen to think it was on the market even longer than 1,000 days, because I've walked up there myself many times, and I'm thinking I've seen it there as long as 9 years, that sign.
I think I may have the MLS number for you. I found it. Does this sound right? Sources property ID? Would that be the MLS number? No. Okay, no. Never mind. Sorry.
No, that's okay. But if you've got the address 19 Lead Mine, I'll just scoot over to my computer and pull it up.
Okay, great.
Continue. Okay.
All right. Well, that's good to know, Dan. That's an important one. So we'll keep it on our list for keep the looking, and we'll try to figure out what's going on there and whether it's something that's potentially going to be bought. If the price is coming down, maybe there's an eagerness for the owners to sell it somehow. And then we can also
for 9 years.
I remember walking by there 9 years ago because my son lives up there, and I'm pretty sure the sign was up there before. All right. Okay, thanks, Dan, on that one. Any other particular land, okay, let me look at my list here for the agenda. The next thing to talk about is our map project. I have heard from every member of our committee, plus a few extras here, that of the particular maps that you will look at. And I also have taken several myself, which didn't mean anything because a bunch of them that I took were in the Holyoke watershed area, and there's only one owner up there, so that doesn't mean anything. What I thought we would do would be start to do exactly what we just did with that discussion of that particular piece of property. And then I know, Janet, you created the Excel spreadsheet. I'm not going to put you on the hook right this minute, but maybe as we get more information, you can update that spreadsheet and we can talk about. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. And then I want to leave time tonight to be sure we continue to talk about the process for how we're approaching things. Dan, you've brought up some really good points about the different ways to approach landowners, the different bit of types of information they want, et cetera. And we're massaging that process. We know it's very much going to have to be customized around specific individuals and circumstances and priorities, et cetera. So we're not, every bit of information is helpful. So does anyone want to start with any of the lands they've had a chance to look at on their lists? Anyone want to volunteer to start?
I'll start.
Great.
Okay, I did maps 5, 6, 7, and 8. I think it's kind of hard to talk about it without mentioning names myself. Is that okay? I don't have to put them in the minutes.
Well, this is a public meeting, and we have said that we're not going to be talking about names unless they've specifically expressed something of interest directly to the committee. So I think we'll stick with map numbers and names if you can. Map numbers.
Well, I didn't write down all the numbers, so
well, I have the book. So if you
it's gonna be very specific, but to the north, number 5 borders Westhampton. To the west, it's some land that people have expressed interest in selling, and the Holyoke Waterworks. To the east, it's Pomeroy Mountain, and almost all the land is in chapter. Of most interest on number 5, I think, is parcel 1 and parcel 3. Parcel 1 is 60 acres, parcel 3 is 85 acres. They're both in chapter 61 forest. They're owned by a family who came to all of the neighborhood outreach dinners, expressed a lot of interest in conserving their land, do not live in town, live in New Hampshire. The only frontage is, I think, parcel 1 on Edwards Road. Then map 6.
Well, wait a sec, Diana. Wait a sec. So the map 1, I'm looking right at it, and I do see that name. I know it's on there in the map, the copies that we have. It starts with P, right? That name?
Right. They're very nice people, and they just seemed really interested in conservation.
So that's kind of in a high category. If they are interested, they took the time to come into these meetings last year, and they have a great number of, do you remember any specifics of what they said, or just that they wanted to see conservation of their land?
They just wanted more information, I think, and they just felt like it was beautiful property and it should be preserved. They didn't want to see it developed.
Okay.
And, they do not, I think they might have some connection with Easthampton too. Maybe they live in both places, but I know they drove to these meetings, at least one of them, from New Hampshire.
Do you have addresses for them in New Hampshire or any place in their list?
I would have to go back and look.
Okay. So do you think the next step is to send a letter to them and just kind of follow up and say you came to those meetings and we'd like to talk with you and see what did you get out of the meetings, because there's a lot of information that was shared, and where's their thoughts on this at this point?
I guess. I just kind of felt like if we do something like that, we have to be able to tell the people what we can do for them. Can they donate the land, or, I think we have to be ready before we ask them what their thoughts are. if they say, is the town interested in buying it or something like that? You know,
Well, we wouldn't be able to answer that. And I think it would be a little, this is my opinion, I think it's a little backward to go to the town and say, do you want to buy this land, or do we want to go to CPC when we don't even know what the landowner really
that.
wants?
I know, but yeah. Okay, well, all right.
Does anybody else have any thoughts on this? I mean, we are so new at this. What else can you say about approaching a landowner like this with such a large amount of acreage?
I'm just wondering if, you know, we identified this because it meets certain criteria. I wonder if we can develop a handout that says, or a letter that says, you know, we're reviewing a number of parcels in town, and your particular parcel rates really high in the categories that we identified in terms of beautiful, complimentary kind of statements, but at the same time say, you know, the value is in its, you know, water protection, or, you know, contiguous to existing properties or wildlife corridor or something. But I mean, to just come up with something that we're telling them that, you know, their property, we're reaching out to them because their property, you know, has a high, you know, scored high on some index or something, and that if they would like to discuss any further, you know, opportunities with the town or our committee, to reach out to us or something.
My opinion, I think that's a great idea to do if you don't have an in already. And if the people that we were just talking about were very interested enough that they came to a meeting, that I think if we could find a way to get in touch with them either by mail, or if we can get a phone number to give them a call and just come back to them and say, you know, we know you came to the meeting, like you said, Cindy, and are you thinking that you could have some interest, because we really like the land and we would be interested in preserving it for the town. Let them know that, you know, we do have interest, not that we'd want to buy it, but they may want to donate it. But we don't have to tell them that part of it, just to ask what their thoughts are.
Any other thoughts?
As a public person, could I share an opinion?
Of course, please.
So this property, both of these properties are already in Chapter 61, right?
Correct.
For forest. So that means that they have a forest management plan in place.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good step, like, to begin with. That means these people are already have taken action to actively manage that property. And when the property leaves Chapter 61, the town gets right of first refusal, correct?
Correct, but we only have like 120 days to act on it. That's the thing to be avoided. We have learned, you know,
I see.
If we really want a property, you know, it's much better to do it outside of that right of first refusal than to be, I mean, it is at least one option, but it really puts a lot of pressure on the town from a financial aspect to come up. You know, if they get a bona fide offer, the town has to meet it under Chapter 61, and there's all these time constraints.
That's a very good point. Thank you. From the academic world that I've learned, I hadn't thought of it from that perspective. So thank you very much.
Well, that's kind of how we got Clearwater Woodland, but it was a miracle that we managed it. You know?
Now, isn't this property landlocked? Does it have any potential for development on that property?
I think it has frontage on Edward Road. One of the parcels does. Edwards Road. Yeah.
But is that an active road at this point? And I ask that because the parcel next to it, west of it, is owned. It's also on map 4. Is also in it's no longer in 61. It came out, and the owner is on map 4, parcel 1, and the owner begins with the letter C. If you see it on the maps you're looking at, I know it's out of chapter, by the way. I talked to Martha Leamy about that. Those owners really wanted to talk about putting their property on the market. The road that their land is on is Edwards Road, and it is not a road that's an active road in our community any longer. So I wonder if that's the case on the parcels that we're talking about on map 5, parcel 1 and parcel 3, same owners.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking that one needs a little more research because I'm not sure that's an active road right now, Edwards Road.
I should also mention that between these owners,
Yep.
2 parcels, is a bigger parcel, 100 acres, owned by a realty company, also in Chapter 61.
So I talked to, because April couldn't come tonight, and I saw that realty company on there. I asked some questions. She looked it up, and she knows who those owners are. They live in Granville. It's 2 brothers. They own a lumber mill, have owned it for a long time. The name is familiar to me as a Westfield native, and that's in Chapter 61 Forest as well. But another one, I don't know their long-term plans. They might be foresting it periodically for the lumber value.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that looks to be landlocked as well. I think that's a good question, Charlie. And that sort of speaks to the imminence of development. If it's very landlocked, how easy is it to be sold or developed, or do they just want to put it in some kind of a conservation that they can still be the owners, like a conservation restriction? Maybe that's an option. They still are the owners, but then it's still conserved. If the owners of the other 2 parcels, 1 and 3, really just like the idea of conservation, maybe they don't need to sell it, or maybe they want to. We don't know. That's why I think the way Paula put it, we can't, and actually Rini, we can't really go in knowing every option until we know what their direction and interest is. That's kind of how I see it. I'd rather develop a direct relationship with these kinds of owners and then get a sense for what they need to know or what we need to know.
Yeah. With a conservation restriction, there should, if it's written appropriately, they should still be able to go in and take trees out.
Okay.
And I think if I remember Wolf Hill, there was some discussion of that. Mala may correct me here, but in any case, they might be able to sort of give you a conservation restriction if they could get the lumber. It might be quite inexpensive, I might think.
It will need a forest management plan.
Well, if it's in Chapter 61 Forest, Janet, is it already under a forest management? That's part of the criteria, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it might already be a forest management plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would think it would be if these guys are foresters, yeah, for sure. But one thing on the Edwards Way or Edwards Road there, do we not have a map somewhere? I've seen one anyway from Randall about roads in town and discontinued roads.
Well, we do. We brought it over to Mr. Hendrick, who's, long-term resident, and we were hoping to get an understanding of what those old, perhaps inactive roads are. And I don't have the map in front of me, Chris. I don't know.
Well, I thought we had a list, maybe not a map, but a list of something I thought I saw not too long ago. But
really? Yeah. Can you remember where? Or?
Well, I'll have to think about that. But yeah, I'll try to remember. I can't remember where I saw it now.
And keep in mind the distinction between a discontinued road and an abandoned road.
Mm-hmm.
They are not the same things, and you need to go over collections of old maps. That's never on just one. Janine, when she was the town clerk, had spent much time as a humongous favor to us going through a century's worth of town meeting minutes and notes, because during the town meetings, that's when they declared, in some cases, roads abandoned or discontinued. And the wording is significant. And depending on who the town has hired to do the assessor's maps, some of them show those roads and some of them do not.
And what is the usage difference between those two distinctions, Mara?
An abandoned road reverts back to the property owners on either side. A discontinued road is still owned by the town, but it's not maintained.
Okay.
So,
okay,
Marla,
thank you.
I know you talked to me about that one other time. and you mentioned that Janine had done a whole lot of work on this. Do you think there's a document someplace that represents the work that she and you did together? Is that possibly what Chris is referring to?
No,
Oh, okay.
I was looking specifically for the end of Walcott Road. I wasn't looking for the whole town.
I see. So you don't know about a document regarding all the old roads or all the, whether they're discontinued or abandoned?
They have, I would look in the assessor's office and in the town clerk's office.
Okay. All right. Let me follow up with, Reenie's not, April's not here as our connector with the assessor's office. Let me ask April to do that research to find out what those roads are. Okay, I'll take care of that. But back to these specifically these properties on map 5, 1 and 3 lots. Do we have a consensus about our next step on that? I mean, it's a good one because these owners have already shown up at these meetings.
That's a good sign, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I think if we have a sign-in list, maybe that we saved from those outreach meetings, we might have an address or a contact information, email, something.
I should have it somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so between Diana and me, we'll do our best to figure this out, and we'll make contact, and we'll try to meet with them. And if they live in Easthampton, then we'll make it easier. Or, in the time of COVID, this is all a big challenge as to how we meet up with these people, but we do the best we can. Okay. Let's see.
I have one quick comment.
Yeah.
On the parcel that we were talking about before, Siklowski.
Yes, Siklowski.
I did look up, and there is a 5.4 acre piece that belongs to them that sticks into Easthampton. So you have the 31 acres that is in Southampton and 5.4 acre that abuts that in Easthampton. But that's all it is. It's a fairly small piece.
Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting, Paula. So the vast majority of that parcel is in
Southampton. Yeah.
I wonder if Mr. Beaujolais knew that, Diana.
I think, upon reflection, I think what he was thinking about is just the water, that it's the water that Easthampton needs and relies upon. And so they are the ones, I think he was thinking, why should Southampton put itself out when they're the ones who would benefit? I think that was his.
Well, we at least need to bring it to their attention, to their water collection.
Yeah.
So that'll need follow-up before the next meeting, and I'll work on that too.
Okay, and the other piece, the lady that lives in Jacksonville, Florida, she started selling that piece in 2006. And of course, it could go back even further, but that's what we have as a record. And she had it listed at $750,000. Then it went down to 720, and now it's at 375. But I have an address for her, but not a phone number.
Can you repeat what it was listed as in 2006, Paula, again?
August 28th, it was listed at 750,000. Okay,
and then it went down and currently is at 375. Is that what you said?
Correct.
Okay. Do you have that address right in front of you right there in Jacksonville, Florida?
I do. Do you want it? Do you want me to just email it to you after the meeting?
Do you mind just repeating it out loud right now?
Certainly. 4600 Middleton Park, Circle E, Unit A, 724.
Wait a minute, Unit A, 724.
Jacksonville, Florida. The zip is 32224.
Okay, I'm just, the top part of that address, 4600 Middleton Road.
Middleton Park
Circle.
And then there's an E, so there must be an east and west, I guess.
Okay, very good. That was the part I didn't hear. Unit A, 724 Jacksonville, 32224. Okay.
Correct.
That's really, really helpful to to have in our, our list of things to be able to make contact. That's great. Thanks for finding that out. All right. Okay, we're not going to be able to go through everybody's land tonight. Diana, did you want to add any more for any of the ones you've looked at?
I'll just look at the high points. Are we putting all this in the minutes, or we're just waiting on this to?
I'm taking notes of the specifics. You can just put general information in the minutes, okay?
Okay. On map 6, there's 218 acres in 3 parcels owned by the same owner at the foot of Pomeroy Mountain that are in Chapter 61B. There's 50 acres labeled Pomeroy Mountain Camp and the owner's name, also in 61 Forest. Then there's the Hendrick parcel that's being donated to the town, is also there. And gosh, why did I not write the rest of that down? I must have erased it. But I know that of most interest on that is the 35-acre parcel across the street, which abuts Clearwater Woodland and is very much crossed by streams, is very scenic. So there's that. And then there's this parcel we've just been talking about, and the Holyoke Beagle Club.
Yeah, the Beagle Club, do we know for sure if that's in some kind of a chapter status or?
It says 61 Forest on the map.
Yep. It does. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
Okay,
because I have all that information also, and that will definitely go on our Excel sheet. I think the one owner whose last name begins with an F, like Frank.
correct.
Yeah, don't say it. It's
Oh, I'm sorry.
13. I know that he's expressed to various people in town that he knows that he's not doing anything with his land right now. That's my understanding. He allows people to go on his property, and he doesn't like it when they do anything like blaze trails or mark trails or anything. But I've run into that gentleman up there, and he asked me what I was doing, and I said I was walking on there. Does he mind? He said, no, I don't mind. I just don't want you to do anything to damage my property. And he's pretty generous in general about that. The one that's the Pomeroy Mountain Camp, it's in 61 Forest, right?
That's a letter that begins with a G.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if you could do anything with that. That's the same person that owns the top of the mountain.
Correct.
Yeah. Chris, is that in fact the top of the mountain, or is the top of the mountain in Easthampton?
Well, you can get to it from Easthampton. That's about the only way that you can really access it. I don't know if this represents the top of the mountain or not. This map,
I've
you mean?
always wondered, because I walked up there this spring.
No, he'll usually not let you do that.
Well, take your life in your hands.
Well, we did it, Diana. You were with me. Remember?
I know, but I also know people who have been threatened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Just a question on one, Diana. You were talking, I know, about the land on right off of Cold Spring that is opposite what we just got as a gift. Is that parcel 18 you're talking about?
Just a second. I'm sitting out here in
yes,
the.
it is.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's the other part that joins Clearwater. Is that it?
Yes, 35 acres. It's under a realty trust by a name that begins with an H.
Yep.
And as we know, one of the owners died recently. But we have been in touch with people who know the remaining owner, and they're just they feel strongly that we should move carefully.
Which we will, because we do know people in town that know that family pretty well. And the remaining owner is an elderly woman herself, and this isn't her priority right now, right? Okay. All right. Can we hold on a further discussion of lands for tonight and keep going on this on another day? Because this is going to be a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, we're only on 2 of mine.
Yeah, I really am aware of the time here. We're already up to 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
And unless anyone, whether it's Rini or Chris, you had some, or Janet, or Paula, Paula. Are there any properties you looked at on your list that you think are like, we better be on them right as fast as possible?
No, not mine. Not me, this is Janet.
I didn't catch that, Janet. Say that again.
No, I have nothing to say.
Okay. Anybody? If you haven't had a chance to look at the properties, that's okay. Rini?
No, this is Rini. I just need to confirm the maps because I think 2 of the maps were also overlapped by other people. If that's okay, that's fine. But, the middle road, I don't know if you're aware of it, but across from the Touchette Farm, there are 3 properties that are abandoned or I think 1 is being renovated. But there's quite a few houses right in a row. And I don't know, I have to look into, I don't know if anybody offhand knows who's the owner of those. And I know somebody asked if they could renovate them and, rebuild there, but I think they were denied. So I was going to look into that, but I just wanted, Cindy, if you get a chance, just confirm the maps, because I think the 4 the numbers I gave were right around my home here. And I do remember when you sent out the email of everybody's numbers, there was some overlap. So just confirm which ones you'd like me to do.
Sure. Okay. Rini, I had you down for 29. Wait a second. Sorry.
Lord.
Wait a second here.
Yeah. You want me to tell you? Yeah. 29, 30, 35, and 40.
Did you say 29?
Yeah, because I think Janet's got that. It's 29 and 30, right?
Yeah. So that's what I said. I wrote to you with the map and then numbers, and then you put out the numbers, like who chose what. And I noticed that there was an overlap, so I was just waiting to hear from you on what did you want me to do.
Okay.
So if you want me to do...
Janet, have you started to look at 29 and 30?
So I have 24, 26, 29, and 30. 24, 26, 29, and 30. There's a square.
Thank you, 25, Janet, 24,
I think you
25.
I think you were 24.
25, 29, and 30.
Yep, 24, 25, 29, and 30, right.
Okay, Janet, if you haven't started to look at those, do you want to just stay with 24 and 25 right now?
Sure.
And then, Rini, do you want us to keep 29, 30, 35, 40?
Yeah, I kind of like you because this is like my neighborhood. Like the 4 of them are around like the area where, White Loaf and Middle Road and all that. So I'd be very interested in looking at these areas. But if Janet already started or if she wants it, I'm fine. I mean, you can just give me 2 other ones.
No, that's fine. We'll say 24 and 25 and then tell me whatever else you would like for me to do.
All right. Because, Janet, you're going to be doing entry on the Excel sheet, for now anyway, why don't you just do those 2, 24, 25, okay?
Let me know.
Stick with those. And Rini, go ahead and keep 29, 30, 35, and 40.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Sounds good. Yep.
But what you just said about the middle road, do you happen to know which map that is that you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm actually, I have them right in front of me here. It's, it kind of scans a couple of them. 35, must be 40.
40?
Map
Okay.
40. Yeah, so the Touchette Farm, that beautiful farm on Middle Road.
Yep.
Well, the land, actually, now that I have to actually look to see if these lots are actually on map 40 or one that is closer to Westfield, which would be 43. So I'm just, I have to go through and look and see which match up which properties. But anyway, that area is just beautiful. And the view of the mountain is spectacular there. You know what's the problem I'm talking about, the Touchette Farm on Middle Road?
I'd like to interject that I think it was Marty Touchette came to both of the neighborhood outreach meetings, and so I'm not sure which is his property, but he was very interested as well.
Yep.
Yeah. He owns a lot of the land there. He owns that whole land. I think was it his brother that died last year that owned the house, the house on the property. So they own the intersection of White Loaf and Middle. They own the farm on the corner that's up on the hill that if you're coming down White Loaf and you're landing at the intersection of Middle Road, that farm on the right, I always call it the Babe Farm because it's got this interesting collection of animals that all talk to each other. Anyway, they own that land there, and they own the land all around there, that beautiful sunset. It's all Touchette. And then the properties I'm talking about are up in the hill on the east side, and there's 3 properties right next to each other that all have abandoned houses. So I'll find out who currently owns them, and if it's like one owner, or it's just I think there's been a lot of interest in those properties.
Okay.
So I can find out.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, why don't you do that? I'm just making little notes about this, that you're looking into that. That'll be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so we will keep going with this project. If you have a chance to look at the maps that you were going to look at, we'll do that. We'll keep looking at it. That's all that we can do. And I've done some looking at maps in the 3, 4, 9, 10, 15, 16, 21, 26 area. That's all, up there in the mountain there. And there are some interesting open properties up there too. And a lot of it is Hoyok Water Works as well. Okay, let me write that down, map 40. Okay, so let's move on. And I want to jump quickly to just a couple of updates on the open space and recreation plan and the Friends of Southampton's open space. The open space and recreation plan draft is missing one important part, and that's the ADA listing of properties in our town. And I know that's being handled by our town administrator, so he's, I'm sure, on top of that right now. I did contact our PVPC consultant on that project. His name is Ken Comia, and he can't do very much else until he gets that piece from Ed. So, I'm sure he's going to be able to get that soon, I hope. Okay, and Friends of Southampton Open Space, last week I went to the meeting after our meeting here. I have great news. They really are a 501c3. They have moved pretty far into developing their logo and their website. They've moved pretty far on that. And they have on their radar the idea of doing some kind of notification to get people to join the Friends of Open Space. Maybe, Eileen, you weren't able to get to that meeting last week, right? Okay. I know you're on the board, right, Eileen, on that? Yeah, thanks. I know you're muted, but you can speak about.
Secretary.
Yay, that's great. And then also, hopefully, there's going to be moving in, again, time of COVID, this is a big challenge, towards perhaps some kind of fundraising events or something where, and I told Allison Wadrisko that I would be happy to volunteer to participate on helping with a fundraising event of some kind, consistent with what we have to do over the next many months before this pandemic issue kind of resolves itself, which it won't for a long time. But we know we still have to do all the things we're doing, and we can't just do gatherings of any kind for quite a while. Do you want to add to that at all, Eileen? Anything about Friends of Southampton Open Space?
Oh, no, I think you said that quite well. The big thing is for us, we really just want to get out the Friends organization out there for people to be aware that we exist. And that's really important. We have the website, the Facebook page should be open fairly soon. And also we've set up a way to for folks to submit their membership dues right online. So really just making it accessible to people as much as possible and having them understand our goal is really important. So I think that's really our goal right now. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to have an in-person fundraiser, so we have to be creative. But just the more we can spread the word in that great list of names you had showed us previously, Cindy, we have all those email addresses and everything, so we can really reach out to people to try to get some membership, dues.
That's good. And that's only a start. And we are also I announced at the last meeting, and Chris is here right now anyway, she's the chairperson of the, or at least the acting chairperson of the update of the master plan implementation process. And we've had a phenomenal number of responses to that. Close to 900 people completed that survey. I just continually believe that we're really in a good spot here in Southampton right now with a growing involvement of people. And we really need to keep that momentum going. And we're going to have more information about the results of this survey. They're very preliminary right now. And hopefully we can have a meeting pretty soon, Chris, right? If we can find a.
Hopefully next week, if we can find one where everybody doesn't have other meetings, yeah.
Between school committee and all the other meetings, that it's been a challenge to get all the meetings in this week.
Yeah, it's scheduled for Monday right now, so it'll conflict already with Concom and maybe another school committee meeting, I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. So I sent out an email to everybody. I think everybody on this email got the draft of the process, and I can call it up right now on the shared screen. I think. Yay, I can do it. Can you all see that? Yep. So what I did was I tried to get less wordy, tried to combine some things, added in stuff we had talked about at the last meeting. I need to remind people that you can't be too terribly specific about these kinds of things. The overriding principles are important, and we're going to always maintain those. We always have to stay within our charge, and which is not part of this document at this time. That has already been accepted by the select board. We're not going to change that. The action steps are noted here, not necessarily in any kind of chronological order.
Cindy, could you make that a little bit bigger by moving your cursor at the bottom? On the bottom right to go higher than 100%.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks you.
Oh, thanks.
Perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
Let's see if I can move that down now. So action steps, we're already in the process of developing this parcel inventory of lands. It's going to be an ongoing process, and we're just going to have to stay involved and, act on things that we discover are really things that need our immediate action. Develop the relationships, gain information about the landowners, and customize the context based on what we know. Facilitate gatherings. Of course, that's all going to be pretty much down the road because we can't gather very many people right now. And we are moving together towards educating the community at large. Now, I think the question came up before about overlap of responsibilities. We have representation tonight from the Conservation Commission. And I'm going to ask, Marla and Charlie and those of you on the Concom, is part of your responsibility as the Conservation Commission to educate the community regarding conservation and climate change? And I know that when we did the questionnaire for the open space and recreation plan, we discovered that people really didn't know a whole lot about climate resiliency and conservation in general, and that was identified as something we needed to do. So what do people in the Conservation Commission have to say about the role of Conservation Commission educating the community?
I'll assign it to the agent.
Oh, you mean that agent that comes to your 40 hours a week, that agent, Marla?
The Phantom?
That's the one.
My response is I only do what Marla tells me.
That's the wrong agent. This is the make-believe one that we don't have.
So Marla,
my response is just seeing, from a distance what the Concom does, that they don't have any time to take on anything else. I just don't see it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
in the past, they've been active in developing all these maps and communicating.
Right.
And last week we had the idea that Dan's contacts at the University of Mass could enhance that associated with aquifer and just educating people in terms of hard copies of information. And one thing that is apparent is that one of our conservation maps, and Mala can correct me here, that is out of date from 2012 to 13, something like that. And there may be 200 or 300 acres that are under conservation but are not identified on that map. I think that's true, isn't it, Mala?
It's not as out of date as one might think. It certainly doesn't have the Clearwater area on it, and it certainly also doesn't have the yet to be finalized Hendrick property on it. But like everything else, when we went for many years with the budget from the town of, oh, how do I calculate this? Oh, that's right, zero. We're not going to spend the money on doing the printing and the updating. So at one point, Andrea Sullivan was looking it up because we also found that PVPC had made a number of mistakes in the acreages. So it's one of those things that we have a bunch of piles of them still from the prior printing. I put stickers on it to change the address. But while we still have, get the Hendrick stuff in there, and then maybe we could consider redoing it. We also find that a lot of the younger folks really are not looking for the paper. They're looking for something online. And we've seen some folks who do have the software to do that. And PVPC also has that, but there's a lot of people who have that. They're looking to go walking around with their tablet in front of their face so they trip over the logs in the woods, looking at that or at their cell phone. And it tends to be a age thing. Do I carry around the paper? You bet, because I also know that the cell phone coverage doesn't work everywhere. But so while we would like to update it, there's a couple of things pending. So before it's out of date, before we even do it, I guess it's right now the priority is clean up the mess of the trail at the Manhan Meadows as opposed to reprinting it, you know. So it's not like it's not on the list, but it's down the bottom. We would rather, for example, put together the brochure for the 111 Glendale Road property because people keep asking for it. But we're in the loop of, I don't want to print trail brochures when we know we're going to be moving the trail and putting new bridges there as soon as we get the money. So if we print the brochure now, you're already out of date before it goes out. It boils down to money, or more to the point, lack thereof. So I've done my fine wine. I'll have some biscuits with my fine wine about the money.
Okay.
I think there's a difference between communicating where the conservation lands are and how to access them, and educating people about climate change and resiliency. Those are two different things.
I agree, Diana, and I was just going to ask for that. What I wrote down was, brochures and maps and updating that. That has historically fallen under the Conservation Commission. It sounds like that's still where you think it falls. Is that true, CONCOM members? Is that what you would say?
Yes.
Okay, but general education around conservation, climate change, the kinds of things that we need to know in the 21st century. Those are things that I think the Open Space Committee can attempt to develop, whether it's speakers eventually, or do this in conjunction with trying to bring various landowners together and keep people, very informed about open space issues. Those are that's kind of where I see this as a broader kind of an education.
I see it that way as well. It is not that we don't see that, and we realize we have different things we need to take into consideration for permitting based on climate change. We see that at MACC conferences, yet the overall, and this goes back to what Diana said, now let's go start doing community education. I certainly pass along to everyone, and on the CONCOM and also the associate members, what we get from the various state agencies about climate change. It's extremely important. It touches the water department, it touches the highway department, it touches the Conservation Commission. It touches every one of our lives. We don't have the bandwidth except maybe Dan, who only sleeps 1 nanosecond a day, but the rest of us don't have that to go out and now do that too.
Okay. All right. Good. If at any point anybody who represents another board or committee sees a crossover on their own responsibilities of their boards and committees, please speak up. So moving on, we're going to follow up with our contacts in a timely manner. We're going to educate our committee on land conservation related matters. I'm one that always can use education personally. We need to understand the costs involved, the surveys, the legal fees, the deed and title searches, the market appraisals, et cetera. And we need to know who would pay these costs. And I think of that specifically around the Saitowski land, because this gentleman has mentioned wanting to conserve the land. We're going to need to know what the survey says and the deed and all that. We can't assume those costs right off the bat. We need to know if that's something he's planning to take care of. And that can be pretty expensive, as we well know. We need to know the funding sources, and I just threw down a few options here: the grants, the CPC funds, perhaps a big, deep pocket donor or small donors via the 501c3 contribution of the Friends of Open Space.
Kestrel in there too. They would probably come before New England Forestry Foundation.
All right, great. I'll add that in there. Thanks.
Yeah.
And I know there's many more, Dan. Go ahead. Go ahead, Dan.
Oh, sorry. No. I was going to mention one thing I didn't see on your list of funding options was the concept of the bargain sale, right? So a bargain sale is where landowners, actually I'll read off my screen, is where landowners can sell their land or conservation restrictions at a price below its fair market value, the difference between the appraised market value and the sale price, to a qualified conservation organization, such as a land trust or a state conservation organization, is considered a tax-deductible charitable contribution, providing some income and potentially some tax benefits. So.
Okay, I'm putting that in. That's good. I have heard of it, but it's good to know. And you know, Dan, I know you only sleep a nanosecond, although I am aware you took a little rest last week.
Sorry.
No, joking there. But you are forever keeping me informed of things, and I've kind of kept track of a lot of the stuff you sent me, and I would like to see us develop a resource list to be shared with this committee. I'm not prepared to put that together quite yet, but you would help me on that, you know.
That's where I get confused. Like, I would love to email, like, this is the information I'm emailing you is all from my class, so it's all public information.
Yeah.
So I don't the open meeting law. I never want to violate that, but since it's like information from my class, could I send it out to more people than just you?
Well, I think we need everybody's approval on that. I mean, do you all want to get the multiple emails? He's got a lot of great information. He's either reading things or he's learning about various websites, et cetera. Actually, Dan, what I'd like to propose is that you and I do this together, and we put together a list of resources, and then we share it with the committee, so it's not fragmented. I know there's people maybe on this call that get tons of emails a day and just need to, we just need to
I understand.
be a little sensible around that. I know I would have felt that way when I was working full-time, and I'm only doing volunteer work full-time.
Cindy, just to follow up on that while you're on that paragraph, a large part of the options about what landowners can do is all written out in the professor's book on Your Land, Your Legacy. It's all there. And it's all about, the state tax credit, all these kinds of things are in there. It's just, there's a lot of information in there. And part of the challenge, I think, as we said last week, was to try and distill that down into like a one-pager that could be much more understandable by the average person, because it's, there's all sorts of case studies, all sorts of options are presented in his publication there, which are great, but it's not easily digestible, I guess I would say.
All right, I'm going to put that up here.
Excuse me, Mala, didn't we have a list, a one-page list way back when. I suppose it's not to be found now, but do you remember that?
Of which?
Of how people can dispose of their properties and the legal definitions and options they have. I think there were 5 or 6 stages there, or
Well,
5 or 6 options. And I know it was typed up, but okay.
I don't know offhand where that is. I know I've seen what Dan has been getting in his class, and it's certainly not that it would have changed that much, but, and that's one of the reasons we paid for Dan to go to this class, because it's, since we had been working with Paul on other matters, you know, we being open space, town related stuff, and Charlotte had him as one of her professors when she was with us, that this is whatever we had before, but the updated version. So I think Dan can do it, but it's, and part of it is, well, you know me well enough by now. It's certainly, there's the ideal people, oh, to preserve it. A lot of people who own land in Southampton don't live here, haven't, and are not coming back, and they just want the cash. That's a reality.
Yeah, I think the appeal is the capital gains benefit at their death, right? Because if they're going to be passing a lot of money along to their heirs, donating the land allows them to offset a lot of those capital gains tax. I don't know. That's my thought on how to.
Yeah, or they live in Florida and they want to buy a new boat.
So Dan, given that you really are involved very, very significantly during this class you're taking, and you've started to send off so much good information, can you be working to compile a list of these various resources? We know that there's that wonderful publication, Your Land, Your Legacy, but Chris is right. It's longer. It's a little bit more challenging to follow. Yep. And can we ask you to work on this a little bit? And I can certainly help you. And we've got other really great writers on this committee that can, kind of look at it afterwards just to see if we can make it concise.
Good. I think it's a good way to pay the town back for my paying for the class. So I think it's a good thing.
And Marla, considering the Conservation Commission is paying for it, ignore that phone number. We're getting these strange phone calls up here. Can you agree to that he would be able to do that with the information he's gaining from the class?
Absolutely. That's why we signed him up for it.
Okay. All right. Great. All right. And then moving on, just listing other options, donation to the town, the Chapter 21 and Chapter 61 options. I do not understand Chapter 21 at all. That's something I do not know. But that was something, Charlie, you had mentioned.
That's liability when you're on town property. It's related to liability. It's a weight that prevents people who get fall on town property from suing the town.
Oh, does it belong on this list as far as?
It's an important piece of information for sure. And if you charge money to get on. If you charge money to get on that property, then you're liability for the possibility of a suit if something bad happens.
Okay.
I got that from Conservation Works.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And then the other one is that landowners retain the ownership but grant access, and I guess that's where Chapter 21 falls, is right there, as well as consider an APR or a CR. It's still conserved in perpetuity, but the owner continues to be the same person. That might be an option for some people who are landowners. And then other forms of conservation, which I don't know. There probably are other forms that I just don't know about. And then
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Sorry, Rini. Where are you reading about this Chapter 21?
I'm looking. Are you looking at the screen?
Yeah.
So I think Charlie had that. Remember, we asked everybody to make a contribution to this list. Charlie had brought that up. So
yeah, it's Mass General Law. It's right in the Mass. It's Chapter 21, isn't it? There were 17 something with it too, paragraph or something. It was in that, oh, where is it? I might be able to find it.
Okay, yeah.
It's Mass General Law, Chapter 21. I'm looking through my, I don't know. It's dark here. But
So,
anyway,
Charlie,
yes.
Charlie, you don't have to do it right this second, but I think the point is, I certainly didn't understand. Did you know what it was, Rini? So we need to expand on what it is a little bit here.
Yeah, I just feel like we've spent a lot of time on the Chapter 60 stuff, and I just wanted to, where I could get more information on, because it just says here, Mass General Law, Chapter 21 and Chapter 61. I just wondered where I could get more information about Chapter 21.
Yeah, if you go to its recreational use statute, MGL, Chapter 21, Section 17C. And I have information about the public use of land for recreation, conservation, scientific, educational, and other purposes, including landowner's liability limit.
Huh.
So that's a useful, and it's a barrier between, you know, some of our trails and they're being in less than ideal condition, and we don't charge money to go down them, so that's where home free for some sense.
All right, thanks.
That's great. I'm glad you asked that. We do need to understand it, or at least I do. Okay, identify partners in Southampton, the other boards and committees and municipalities. We already are talking about connecting with perhaps Westhampton and Easthampton on various projects, Kestrel Land and other land trusts, conservation works, the Commonwealth Division of Fisheries and Wildlife.
Can I just say one thing?
Of course.
Being very cautious, I don't think we should have a private company listed there, like Conservation Works. Just from an experience of different stuff going on right now, we shouldn't be, yes, we shouldn't be proprietary right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're, maybe you could say conservation consultants or something like that. Not just the name of a company, of a specific company.
I think that's valid. What does everybody else think?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
All right, I'm going to change that and take out, because there might be other conservation consultants that would be of assistance to us. We certainly contacted many of them when we were.
Well, not Conservation Works isn't very good. They are, but
yeah, they
absolutely, yeah.
And then I had down here other entities, Nature Conservancy, Audubon. Just as an aside, Ted and I have been up here in Vermont this week, and we have gone to a different conservation land or state park every single day. We've been to the most beautiful one that was owned by the Nature Conservancy and another one owned by Audubon. And I'm telling you, I'd love to get some of what we see up here into our town. Just absolutely gorgeous. Okay, so this is still draft.
Can I ask or say one thing? Sorry.
Yeah.
So,
no, don't apologize.
Well, yeah, I don't want to drag out your meeting. So through what I've learned in my class, UMass has this Keystone Project extension, right?
I've heard of that, yeah.
Where they choose people because they have a goal of spreading knowledge throughout the community for land protection. So they have actually have these people called Keystone Cooperators who they specifically train in this type of work in terms of land preservation. And I remember, well, actually I could probably do it right now, that I Googled, well, is there anybody from Southampton or this area?
Yeah, Christina. Christina's a member.
Oh, she's already been through the training?
Oh, yeah, she's been a Keystone member for quite a while.
That's awesome. So I think that's a partner or a connection that we should, that would help.
What is it called? Tell me again. Keystone
Project? It's the Massachusetts Keystone Project.
Oh, okay.
UMass Extension Program.
Okay, very good. I'll put that down here. Very good. Okay. So this, I don't want to go through this every meeting, so I'm going to hold this draft and we'll go through it again and maybe in a few meetings in the future and see if we want it.
This is Janet. Can I just say about 10 lines up, it says MA Fish and Wildlife. I think it's supposed to be fisheries, right? Under educate OSC members.
Fisheries?
Fisheries and wildlife. You have fisheries down below. I think really, okay. Down at the bottom, the next to last line does say fisheries and wildlife. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Great. Okay, so we've made some changes on it. I'm going to get it on one page, trust me. So I will email this out again, and you can just keep it in, print it if you wish, or keep it in your email or something, and we'll just keep looking at this for another future meeting. Very quickly, I'd like to know if we have any reports from other boards and committees, and I'll start with the planning board right now. So the planning board had a hearing last night about the first adult use marijuana dispensary for our town, and the hearing ended. It was presented by the owners and his representative. The police department has already signed off on it in a positive way. Basically, they seem to meet all the criteria quite successfully. The planning board has a consultant whose name is Larry Smith. He was a former employee or a senior planner with PVPC. He's no longer with them, he's retired. But he is our consultant. So we actually didn't vote on accepting it because we want to see his final report before we vote on accepting that. That location is going to be in the Red Rock Plaza, right next to, south of the Michael's Coffee Shop. Some of you may be familiar with that. It's going to be called Dreamers. And
I bet.
What was that? What was the comment on that? Yeah.
Nothing.
So anyway, they've really gone through all the steps. It seems to me quite successfully. The good news is it'll bring 6% of their revenues will come back to the town, which could help our town a good amount of money. So that's one thing. And other than that, let's see here from the planning board. We're still working on our the stormwater coding, stormwater bylaw process that's pending. It's an ongoing thing right now, and our general review of zoning bylaws.
Hey, do you think we're going to do that next meeting? So I should be prepared.
You should ask Paul. You should ask Paul.
Right. That's what I meant.
Yeah, ask Paul. Okay, and let's see here. Conservation Commission, can you give us a report? Charlie?
I think Mala would be most appropriate. We haven't had a meeting until next Monday, but I think, Mala, you have had some forestry work done, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, our report to you would be only as it relates to open space, right? But
right. Absolutely.
We had engaged a forester, Tom Jenkins, who is from Easthampton. He, using the forest management plan that had been developed for the Pomeroy Mountain property, then made a forest cutting plan. We had it out to bid. We hired a logger, and there was some problems getting the gravel up there only because it was hard to find someone who would do it. But he got the gravel in, because to drive the heavy trucks, you need to subsidize it not subsidize it, stabilize it. And he expects to be done probably by the end of October, middle of November. So that way, once that's done, we can then put a trail up there. It's not that there is no trail, because there are ATV trails all over town, but we can formalize it, add to it, make a loop. Trails are supposed to, so you can come back without having to just double back on yourself. And then get the signage up there, because as much as the town has owned that property for many decades, it was always the challenge of going through the right-of-way through private property and then having no place on the town property to park your car. So we're working on that, so that'll be good. We got the official approval for the forest management plan for the Alice Brown Conservation Area on Pleasant Street. So then at another Concom meeting, we can decide if we want to then have a forest cutting plan developed from that. And to be clear, on none of these are we doing, our goal is not to make money in clear cut. Our goal is to take care of the forest by appropriately taking out dead and dying trees to give the understory a chance. And then if we get any money from the trees that are removed, we can then use that for trail work and putting up signs. So that part is coming along, albeit slowly because of the pandemic and everything else.
Okay. Is that it, Marla? Thank you very much.
Well, I can also tell you that if you ever want to put sand on your beach, you must get a permit first. And if you ever want to put a dock in the water, you need to get a Chapter 91 license.
Okay.
That's what we do.
Well, that's good. That's great, Marla. Thanks. Let's see here. Parks Commission. Paula and Dan, any kind of update regarding open spaces?
Nothing that I recall from our last meeting. We're having another meeting next week. And I will report to them on this one, but at this time, no. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, the only thing we really talked about last time was the youth soccer leagues, right? And the use of the fields. That's it.
Yep.
And am I right that at the special town meeting, which is going to be in October, there is going to be something on the warrant regarding the pickleball courts? Is that coming from Concom? I mean, from Parks Commission?
Yes, about getting CPC money.
Oh, is that what it is? Is CPC money? Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I would like to reiterate for the parks people that at different conferences I've been at, the different grants people said any Western Mass town that applies for a parks grant will get it because they never get any applications from out here. So I would have thought like pickleball, that would have been perfect. But it's something that parks people would have to do.
How would we know? How would we know about this?
I'll send you a link to that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'll send you a link to that particular agency.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you, Diana, on that. In general, all of us, but parks specifically, if you all have like a dream list or a wish list or a maybe someday kind of list, and you think, well, there's no money for it, don't just say we can't do it because there's no money, because as Diana's pointing out, there might be funding for some of these things that we just never think to access. I know because I'm Diana's friend, she's always telling me about these great opportunities that we don't necessarily knock on the door loud enough to get them. And so bring that back to the committee.
Yeah, I think they have gotten parks grants in the past, but not for a while.
Okay.
Strange question, but do greenways count as parks?
I don't think so. I think they count as trails.
Okay. Thanks.
Shared use trail.
Okay. So CPC, Janet, any particular CPC?
Yes, I spoke with Virginia and she said to tell you that there was nothing to report, but we plan to have an October meeting. And she was also planning to do a report to the town and a call for projects, which we do annually anyway. And to tell the Open Space Committee, if it has any projects, please let the CPC know.
Okay, we should probably put that on our next agenda for just discussing what projects we could consider ourselves. We should have a dream list, right?
And then when the call for projects goes out, that's a great way to submit any projects. And there's a link on the website with a form that you fill out for the CPC.
Okay, let's get thinking about that. That's great, Janet. Thanks. Select board, anything you want to throw in? Anybody? Either Chris or Rini?
Well, there is a hearing on Tuesday night, and it's on the East Street Bridge. John Furman from VHB is coming and kind of giving an update on where we're at with the East Street Bridge. I know Concom has sort of signed off on it. we have guests, Highway, Board of Health, and Fire coming next meeting. And the only other thing that I want to mention is that we are getting closer to the purchase and sale and closing of the 93 College Highway, which is the land that is currently town land, which will be sold to the Fletcher family.
Fletcher's, yeah.
Okay. And did I hear you correctly? The buyer is certainly going to be the Fletcher family. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, they were the bidders on the proposal. So yes, there's just back and forth with lawyers right now with details that have to be finalized. But there is a date for the closing. I'm pretty sure it's coming up pretty soon. So we're just hoping that the last of the details can get worked out.
Okay, it's been a long haul, a complicated picture, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So, assessors.
Does Chris have anything else she wants to add?
Oh yeah, Chris.
No, that's fine. I think hopefully it'll come to conclusion.
But in general about the select board, Chris, anything else?
No, that's fine.
Okay. So April couldn't come tonight, but she sent me a report, and that is that they welcomed an assessor who was recently elected, Darcy Gasparini. Doric Dodds is no longer on that board. April is now the chair of the assessors. Janet Kane has stayed on as clerk. And she also said that a couple of parcels of land which are under Chapter 61, are transferring ownership but staying within chapter. And I've asked her to give us, that's public record, to give us information about who those landowners are so we can update our maps, really. Other than that, she didn't have any specific information about parcels that would be important for us to know. And Dan, just to remind you, you asked the question about process for when land comes to the attention of the assessors that it's coming out of chapter. We do have a close relationship with the assessors. They have created a letter that they require landowners to complete. And that date process is very critical because of what Diana said a little while ago. We only have 120 days to pull it all together if we as a town wish to accept the opportunity for the purchase under the right of first refusal option. So I'm glad you brought that up to me a little earlier, but that is in place. So
well, thank you for answering that and all my other questions that I asked, because it's how I learn. So
and if I don't know the answer, I make it up. You know that, Dan. Oh, sorry. Okay. Speaking of maps, and I was trying to remember today. So the maps that you all had copies of, this is the one that says 2017. And then if you flip through them, some of them are dated 16 and some of them are dated 15. The reason for that is that some maps never changed ownership after a year or 2 years, etc. So I asked Martha Leamy for a new map. And she gave me this. And so this is 2019, which is much newer. It's marked 2019, handwritten, and it also has some maps in there that are 2018 and 2017 because there were no changes and therefore there was no new map. Okay. Now, I told you before that, what did I say? Approximately $5.50 to make copies of these maps. If you want an updated one, I'm happy to go to Paradise and do that, and then you can pay me the $5.50. Now, the drawback to that is that the map that you got copies of before had people's names written in them, owners' names and chapter status and other kinds of notes. This does not, because April had gone out of her way to do that a few years back on this old set of maps. So I haven't taken on the update of this with the handwriting. I'm not doing that. I'm not taking on that responsibility. So one option, I don't think there's anybody here who has nothing to do. Everybody on this call is quite busy. But if anybody feels like they want to sort of go back and forth and update a copy of this map that's 2019, but you might even have to go into property cards, you know, to make sure that the owner is still John Smith or Mary Jones or somebody. Or you can just have this, and then you can do this as a comparison. I think I'm going to give you the options on that, unless somebody's volunteering to go out of their way to update this with the handwritten parts of it.
Cindy, I'm not volunteering, but I can tell you that since you have influence with the assessor's office, the property cards that we get to see online are months out of date.
I was thinking that same thing, yeah.
Really?
Months and months. There are a couple properties that we have permits for that the people bought the property this year, and I can't even go onto the town's website to get the updated information because it's still based on last year. And as you know, we can't just go waltzing in and out of the town hall anytime we want. So if the town can give Martha more money or something, I don't know what it is because I'm sure it's work, but the online maps and the online property cards are at least 6 months behind in some cases, and that makes it challenging to do what we want to do.
What were you going to say, Diana?
I was just going to say that, like you said, would be a big job to copy down all the current things. And then they're going to change, you know, there's going to be constant change. So maybe we're better served just to focus on, like if we have a question about a particular property or something, work on that one.
Okay.
You know.
But Marla, I have no power, trust me. But if I can just pass this on to the new chair of the Board of Assessors, who is April.
Yeah, it's not a complaint. It's a request. If resources avail themselves, could they be updated more frequently?
Okay. All right. So I agree with, okay, I will do that. I'll pass that on to April anyway, as just an acknowledgement of what the experience is. So we'll leave it at this. Anybody who wants a brand new copy of the newest assessor's map, understanding that these change a lot all the time, you can ask me for this. This was one copy that was for free, but and if you want, I'll make them for you and I'll deliver them to you. Just let me know, and I think it's approximately $5.50 at this point. Okay.
But would it be wise before any of us contact a landowner that we check and make sure who we have written down on our plan is correct?
Very good point. I think we want to be crystal clear that we're looking at current information. Yeah. And if not, we should check with the assessor's office and say, property card said this, but is this correct? Thank you, Jana. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Charlie?
No, Janet, yeah, that's a good point. I'm hanging in here.
Okay.
But I'd like a copy of the new maps too. If I can order that, I'd like one.
Okay. All right. I'll write down names for anybody who wants one. Okay. Very good.
Is there any understanding of when the 501c3 website's going to be up and running?
I think Eileen left our meeting. She's the clerk of that group. I think it's up and running now. FOSOS.org.
Oh.
Okay. I believe it is FOSOS.org. If that's not correct, Charlie, let me know. I mean, I've looked at it myself. It's very, very, very rudimentary right now.
Hey, you got it right.
Did I get it right, Dane?
Yep.
Did you look it up?
Yep.
Okay. But I am right about being rather rudimentary right now as well, I think. Yep. Okay. Thanks, Charlie, for asking.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to move to wrapping up this meeting tonight. Is there we got to talk about another meeting date. But before I do that, is there any other business that we really need to bring up tonight that hasn't been brought up? None? Okay. I just want to give an announcement on one thing. I emailed our town administrator and asked if we can have a presence, Open Space Committee, on the town website. If you go to the town website, boards and committees, others have the list of who the officers are and also one paragraph of the function of the board.
Yeah.
And also an email address. And Ed said that he will check into that. I know he's always balancing a lot of priorities. So he's hopefully going to get back to me on that, because I'd like to think that if someone was looking for the Open Space Committee, they could find it on the website. But I'm also aware, Chris, were you telling us last week that the whole website is under some potential for upgrade?
I believe so. I mean, I think it's going to be somebody who's been working with the library website, from what I understand, is going to be trying to help get ours back in some sort of shape, because there's a lot of things that are not, it's not very user-friendly. It's very hard to find things that they're really down deep. You have to really search in places that you wouldn't normally think so. So hopefully it's not just putting up new information, but it's doing some redesign. I'm not sure. I haven't heard any details yet, or a contract or anything, but that's what I was led to believe. Somebody was going to be working on that. Okay. If I can add one little piece of information. Sorry, I just thought about this. You may not have heard, myself and Ed Gibson, Matt Rowland, and Charlie Kanicki have put together a little ad hoc grant search committee to help keep track of grants, and we'll be plugging in Diana's brain there too.
Oh, yeah?
For sources. To just keep track of grants that might be available to various entities in town. And just to say, I'm going to shout this out to Parks in particular, since you guys may be having a meeting. We'll be getting ready for the second part of the CARES Act money that was given to the town. That deadline is going to be coming up sometime within the next 2 or 3 weeks, and I've asked that Ed reach out to Parks as well to be sure that you're not included in terms of what needs Parks may have for future CARES Act money. So you should be getting a communication from Ed next week sometime.
Okay.
That's good. That's a great announcement. Thanks. That's a lot of work. And, I just thought of something. Do either of the select board members know the status of the MVP activity? That's very much an open space concern.
Has not started, to my knowledge. Rini, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the last time we asked about it, it was Ed said that once the open space and recreation plan wraps up, it'll sort of like, his intention was that group would then kind of move over to work on the MVP. I thought Fussin O'Neill, like when they got the grant, that they then put together a group that looks at what project can we submit for funding. So we got the funding that allows us to hire a group to help us determine a project. And then from there, I don't know, does anybody else know differently how that works?
No.
Yeah. So anyway, I think we're at the point where we were awarded the initial funding to put together a plan, and I think the intention is that after the open space recreation plan, perhaps that group would then kind of work with Fussin O'Neill and put together a project for the MVP proposal.
Well, that's interesting, and I think we might want to know that, because some of us that were on the open space and recreation plan are here, present right now, and boy, I feel like we're kind of like being spread sort of thin here, being pulled and pushed, and we'd like to understand what the responsibilities are going to be.
Exactly. That's exactly what I asked. I was quite surprised that he mentioned that. Chris, do you remember when that came up when I asked about that?
Yeah, it's been a while, and we haven't got any.
Yeah, so I was actually quite surprised, like, wait a minute, that's not exactly what we all signed up for.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd love to see some new bodies pulled into some of these projects, new knowledge. Somebody like Dan. Dan, I'm not recommending you jump in on this one.
Please, no, don't do it.
Cindy, chill.
For the most obvious reasons, there's only 24 hours in the day, and but more importantly, that people who are like Dan, and maybe Dan, because I know I've heard, actually, I think you and I communicated a little bit about how you have identified a number of individuals in town that are willing to be volunteers on some things. Now, we don't.
People want to help. You just have to help guide them to understand what they can help with. That's connect the two. That's the part.
Well, Dan, thank you very much for that. The response was overwhelming.
The MVP is complicated, though. I don't think, you don't just jump into that. You kind of need to be led into that.
Yeah,
and we do have a company that is going to help. I just think that new members will need. I agree with Cindy that I think that it'll be good to bring in new members, maybe some people from the Friends of Open Space. But that's the response I got when I asked what was happening with the MVP. Fussin O'Neill was the one that helped write the grant with the understanding that we would hire them for the next step, which is to put together a proposal for a project. It might be, something to do with flood protection. It might, whatever. But when I asked Ed, he kind of took it upon himself to suggest that maybe this group, Open Space and Recreation Plan, would then roll into the MVP. And I think I agree. I think it'd be good to get, some new people involved. If there are that many people that are willing to volunteer for the town, we should recruit them into a project like that for climate change stuff.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
exactly.
You'd be surprised the responses that you would get.
Well, and I bet we've got some good qualified people in town that have had some experience in this too. That would be great resources for us. So I think we just need to check Rini with Ed in terms of timelines, et cetera, because that's one we don't want to slip away on.
Cindy and I watched a video webinar of, really amazing projects that different towns like Belchertown had done with MVP money.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the website, town website, and discussing the open space committee. I've looked at Princeton and Ashburnham. They have relatively brief but pointed description of what their open space committee does. It's a nice. They have some pretty nice verbiage there.
Mm-hmm. Maybe the mission that Cindy developed would be a good thing to.
Well, we developed it jointly. We don't want to recreate everything brand new. You know what I'm saying? We want to utilize some of the same verbiage that we've already had ratified, et cetera. But the point is, we are an important committee. We do need a presence. We do need to be able to point people to a place where they can read about us and then come from there. All right. Next meeting. Anybody want to propose anything? It's a Thursday night. Is Thursday turning out to be a good night for meetings for this group?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I am, as we speak, open for all the Thursdays in October. I'm going to tell you that my daughter who lives in France had this idea that we might all meet in Croatia. I'm shaking my head because Croatia is one of the countries that's open to U.S. citizens, which means, in my opinion, they're going to have a surge of COVID. So we're not too sure we're going to go, but that was going to be the end of next month. So shall we say, what do we say, the 15th? Does that sound good for people? That's three weeks from now? It's more than 4 weeks from now.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll actually be away on the 8th. And again, that's up in the air too because of COVID.
Is everybody else okay with the 15th, which is a Thursday in October?
Sure.
All right. We'll do
6 o'clock.
What did you say? What?
6 o'clock.
Yeah, 6 o'clock, please. Anything else? Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
I'll move.
Okay, all in favor of adjourning?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye. So 8 p.m. we're adjourning. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good
night.
Night.
Good job. Thank you.